My child, do not scroll past this moment, because I did not allow you to arrive here by chance. You may think your hand moved here by habit, that your eye simply stopped here for no reason, that this is just another passing moment in a long day. But I tell you now that I watched the exact second your attention slowed, and I knew this would be the moment where my voice would meet you. There are many things that pass before your eyes each day, many words, many sounds, many distractions, many voices asking for your attention, but I did not allow all of that to decide this moment. I placed this before you because your heart is standing at a place where silence would no longer help you. You have walked through hours carrying thoughts you did not fully explain even to yourself. You have continued moving while inwardly asking questions you did not always speak aloud. You have smiled when needed, answered when required, and kept many things inside because you no longer knew how to explain what felt unfinished in your spirit. But I know exactly where you are inside this hour, and because I know, I am speaking now in a way you must not dismiss. If you skip what I am saying now, you may step away from the very answer you have begged me for in silence. I know the prayers you spoke clearly, but I also know the ones that never became words. I know the nights when your heart reached toward me without full language. I know the quiet moments when you looked upward inside yourself and simply hoped that somehow I understood what you could not explain. I did understand. I heard every silent request hidden beneath your breathing. I heard every inward question that rose while no one else knew your thoughts had become heavy. There were moments you stopped asking openly because waiting had tired you, because hope felt difficult to hold with the same strength, because disappointment had taught you caution. Yet even when your voice became quiet, your spirit still reached toward me, and I never missed it. That is why I say again, do not move past this quickly, because answers do not always arrive in the form you expected, and sometimes the answer begins with a word that corrects what your heart is preparing to carry next. The enemy worked hard to keep your eyes elsewhere today, but I overruled that plan. You do not always see how often distraction is arranged around the exact moment truth is meant to reach you. Some distractions look ordinary. Some come through tiredness, through restlessness, through sudden thoughts, through unnecessary worry, through small interruptions that seem meaningless. But often the things that try hardest to scatter your attention appear most ordinary because they do not need to frighten you if they can simply delay you. There were many chances for your mind to remain elsewhere today. Many chances for your thoughts to stay occupied with things that do not heal you. Things that do not guide you, things that only keep you circling what has already exhausted you. But I did not allow distraction to win this hour. I reached beyond the noise because what you need to hear now carries weight your spirit cannot afford to miss. You have wondered why certain moments feel unusually heavy, why some days begin with strange inward pressure, why certain thoughts repeat more strongly than before. My child, not every heavy feeling means something is wrong, but some heaviness appears because there is resistance against what is trying to reach you. The enemy does not always fight with visible darkness. Often the enemy simply hopes you remain too distracted to notice when truth arrives, too tired to listen deeply, too quick to move on, too emotionally full to receive correction. But today that plan did not hold. I overruled what tried to keep your eyes elsewhere because what I have to say now belongs directly to where your spirit stands. I pulled your attention here because what is about to happen in your life cannot begin without this word. Some movements around your life require preparation inside you before they become visible outside you. Some changes cannot safely arrive until your heart has first received what it needs to stand correctly when they do. That is why I speak before certain doors open, before certain conversations unfold, before certain realizations fully reach you. My child, There are things near your path that require you to hear clearly now, so that when they appear, you do not interpret them through fear, through old disappointment, or through tired thinking. What is about to happen does not begin with visible signs first. It begins with inner alignment. It begins when your spirit hears what your mind has resisted hearing clearly. It begins when truth settles deeper than anxiety. And because that beginning matters, I pulled your attention here before anything else could fully claim it. There is a reason your heart paused here when many other things tried to take your focus. You felt something slow within you, even if you did not name it immediately. Something inside you recognized wait before your mind formed explanation. That inward pause was not accidental. Your spirit often notices what your thoughts understand later. There are moments when your heart responds before logic arrives, and this is one of those moments. I know how much has asked for your attention lately. I know how many concerns have stood near your thoughts. I know how easy it would have been to keep moving without stopping deeply enough to hear me. Yet your heart paused, and that pause matters. It matters because inwardly you know when something carries more than ordinary words. You know when a sentence touches a place already waiting quietly inside you. That pause was not weakness. It was recognition. Right, you are my peace in the chaos. Lord, if He calms every storm inside you. Every word you are hearing carries my seal, and I do not place my seal where timing is unimportant. My seal means this is not empty comfort given to pass through your emotions for a moment and disappear. My seal means what reaches you now is attached to purpose. I do not seal what has no assignment for your spirit. I do not mark words that do not belong to your present hour. Timing matters because some truths lose strength if heard too early, and some become harder to receive if heard too late. But now is the right moment because your spirit is open enough to hear what must settle before your next inward step. My seal also means you must not treat this lightly. Not because you should fear, but because what carries my mark deserves your full attention. There are many words spoken around you daily, many opinions, many voices, many explanations, many thoughts that rise and pass. But not every word carries life for where you stand now. Some words only fill time. Some words only stir emotion briefly. Some words only sound near truth while lacking peace beneath them. But when my seal rests on a word, it enters deeper. It begins uncovering what has stayed hidden. It begins correcting what quietly drifted. It begins strengthening what has felt weak. That is why timing cannot be ignored now. Stay until the end, because one sentence later may explain why your struggle has lasted this long. I know you have asked why certain things seem close yet never fully arrive, why some seasons feel as though they'd begin but then slow again, why hope rises and then waits longer than expected. There are answers you have searched for through effort, through prayer, through reflection, and yet some answers only become clear when your heart is quiet enough to receive them. Sometimes the reason struggle lasted is not because I forgot you. Sometimes struggle lasted because something within you still needed clearer truth before movement could safely continue. Sometimes delay remained because certain inner agreements had not yet been exposed. Sometimes what felt like silence was actually protection while deeper work continued. My child, one clear sentence can reveal what months of wandering could not explain. That is why you must remain attentive. Do not assume you already know what I will say because your past has taught you certain patterns. Do not decide too quickly that this is simply another comforting word. There is more here than comfort. There is explanation. There is direction. There is unveiling. I know how tired you are of almost reaching breakthrough and then feeling delayed again. I know what it feels like inside you when hope begins rising, and then caution quickly follows. I know how often you have prepared your heart only to wonder why visible change seems slower than expected. I know how exhausting it becomes to keep believing while also guarding yourself from disappointment. There are moments you barely allow yourself to imagine good fully because delay has taught you restraint. There are moments you hold hope quietly because speaking it loudly feels risky after waiting so long. My child, I know the private cost of repeated waiting. I know the fatigue that comes not from one disappointment but from many smaller delays gathered together over time. Please support our channel. Our work is to bring happiness in your life and devotion to God. And if you want, you can support me via Ko-Fi. The link is provided in the description and in the pinned comment. Show your support. This is why I speak with both tenderness and firmness now. Your tiredness must not decide how you hear what comes next. Your past delays must not become the voice that interprets my present word. Breakthrough delayed is not breakthrough denied, but tired hearts often confuse the two. That confusion must end. This is not just encouragement. This is your final warning before elevation. A warning does not mean fear. It means attention is required. Elevation near you cannot safely meet the same inward patterns that served only survival before. What is ahead cannot be carried by old hesitation, old emotional returns, old quick trust, old hidden agreements with fear. Something must be seen clearly now because what is near your life requires a cleaner inward place than what delay allowed you to tolerate before. I am warning because what rises next must not be slowed by what should already be released. If you walk away too soon, you may not understand what I protected for you. There are things you call delay that were protection. There are endings you mourn that guarded you. There are silences you question that kept harm from reaching deeper than it could have. There are closed moments that preserved what still belongs ahead of you. But if you leave too quickly, you may still call protection loss and still misunderstand why certain doors stayed closed longer than you wanted. So remain here. Listen slowly. Let your heart stay open. Because what I protected was never small, and what I am saying now is part of why what belongs to you still stands waiting in my timing. My child, listen carefully now. Because this moment is not ordinary, and what I am saying to you must not be treated like something passing that can simply be heard halfway and forgotten. I know how many things ask for your attention each day. I know how many voices move around you, how many thoughts rise inside you before you even finish 1 hour of your day, how many small distractions try to divide what your heart is able to hold. But I tell you now with great tenderness and also with seriousness, this moment has been separated from ordinary time because your spirit needed this exact word before you move further. You may think you arrived here in a common way, that your eyes found this while doing what you always do, that this is just one more thing placed before you in a long line of many things. But I tell you that I watched the exact path that brought you here, and nothing about it escaped my sight. The moment your attention slowed, the moment your heart paused even slightly, the moment something inside you became still enough to receive heaven had already marked that instant. You are not here because chance arranged it. You are here because your inner life has reached a place where silence would no longer help you. There are moments when I allow quiet because quiet teaches trust. There are moments when I let you sit in waiting because waiting deepens your strength in ways you do not understand while you are inside it. But there are also moments when continued silence would begin harming what I am trying to strengthen in you, and this is one of those moments. I know the thoughts you have carried lately. I know how often your mind has returned to certain questions even when you tried to move past them. I know the small heaviness that has followed you into simple moments. I know how some things that once seemed manageable now feel heavier because your spirit has become more sensitive than before. That sensitivity is not weakness. It is not failure. It is not emotional instability. It is a sign that something deeper in you is listening more carefully now, and because it is listening, I must speak clearly enough that you do not misread what is happening inside your own heart. You were intentionally led here because I know what is forming inside your thoughts even before you decide what to do with those thoughts. I know when your mind begins creating conclusions before truth has fully spoken. I know when tiredness starts shaping your interpretation of what I am doing. I know when old disappointment quietly begins to color how you see present moments. My child, that is why I led you here before those quiet conclusions could settle deeper. You may not always notice how often I guide your attention gently, how often I move your focus away from what would only increase confusion and toward what carries peace. But I do this more than you know. Even now, what you call simple attention is often the result of my hand protecting your inward direction. There were many things that could have taken this moment from you. There were many chances for your mind to remain occupied elsewhere. Yet you are here, and that matters because your spirit needed to meet this word before your thoughts carried you too far into places that do not give life. Heaven marked this exact hour because there are moments that appear small on earth but hold great meaning in places you cannot see. Human eyes often call a moment ordinary because it does not arrive with visible signs, but heaven does not measure importance by outward noise. Some of the most important hours begin quietly, when no one around you notices that inwardly something important is happening. This hour is like that. Outwardly it may seem simple, but inwardly your spirit is standing where one clear word matters more than you know. There are inward doors that open first before visible doors ever move. There are decisions made inside the heart before any visible action happens. And what happens inside you now matters deeply because inward decisions shape what follows more than outward circumstances often do. You may have felt lately that something inside you is asking questions more often than before. Perhaps you noticed how easily your thoughts return to unfinished concerns. Perhaps you have felt moments where peace seemed present 1 hour, and then strangely distant the next without obvious reason. Perhaps you wondered why certain memories returned, why certain old feelings touched your heart again, why certain concerns suddenly felt sharper than before. My child, these things are not always random. Sometimes they happen because your spirit senses movement before your mind understands it. And when that happens, you need my voice more than ever because sensitivity without truth can quickly become confusion. That is why silence would now be harmful. Silence at this moment would allow too many old thoughts to speak without correction. Silence would allow tiredness to explain what only truth should define. Silence would leave room for fear to present itself as wisdom. Silence would let old emotional patterns borrow authority they no longer deserve. I will not allow that when your spirit is standing in such a tender place. I know the private places inside you where caution still lives because of what hurt before. I know how prickly your mind can revisit old conclusions when something new feels uncertain. I know how past delays taught you to protect yourself by expecting less. But my child, if I remain silent while those old habits begin speaking again, then what should become clear may become delayed simply because your heart listened too long to what no longer deserves power. I would not interrupt your attention unless your spirit needed immediate direction. Hear that deeply, because it is not a small statement. I know the difference between ordinary moments and urgent ones. I know when comfort is enough and when correction must come with greater weight. I know when your spirit simply needs peace and when it needs clear direction before another thought settles into place. This is one of those times where direction must come quickly, because what your heart receives now will influence how you stand in what is approaching. Immediate direction does not always mean danger is already here. Sometimes it means the next step requires clearer light than what you presently hold. Sometimes it means one inward adjustment now prevents much confusion later. I see how easily your heart can become tired when you have waited long for certain things to make sense. I see how often you have tried to remain steady even when inwardly you felt uncertain. I see how many times you kept moving outwardly while privately wondering if what you sensed mattered or if you were simply overthinking again. My child, what you feel matters, but what you feel must be interpreted correctly. Not every heaviness means trouble. Not every pause means something wrong. Not every inward stirring means fear should rise. Some stirrings come because your spirit is being prepared, because your heart is being called into greater attention, because something near your life requires you to listen more deeply than before. Comment Jesus, I love you more than life itself if He is truly your everything. That is why I speak now with care, because I do not want you naming this hour incorrectly. Do not call it random. Do not call it ordinary. Do not tell yourself this is simply another passing encouragement. There is purpose here because your spirit has reached a point where direction cannot be delayed without cost. Not a cost of punishment, but a cost of unnecessary confusion. I desire peace for you, but peace must rest on truth, not on avoidance. Truth must enter where old assumptions still linger. There are things you have asked inwardly without full words, and part of why this hour matters is because answers often begin where attention becomes still enough to hear them. I know your desire for clarity. I know your weariness with repeated delay. I know the private hope you still guard carefully because disappointment taught you not to hold it too openly. But I also know that what is ahead for you cannot be entered carrying all the same inward patterns that protected you in older seasons. Some patterns must be seen clearly before they quietly follow you forward. So I led you here intentionally. I marked this hour intentionally. I interrupted your attention intentionally. Not to burden you, but to keep you from carrying uncertainty longer than necessary. My child, heaven does not interrupt lightly. If this hour has been marked, it is because your heart matters deeply in this exact moment. Remain attentive now, because what follows this word is not separate from what your spirit has already been sensing. It is connected. And as you continue listening, you will understand more clearly why silence could no longer remain, why your attention had to be touched now, and why this moment, though quiet on the outside, has already become important in ways your heart will soon recognize more fully. My child, listen closely, because I need you to understand that you did not arrive at this moment by accident, and nothing about this meeting happened outside of my knowing. Long before your eyes reached these words, long before your thoughts slowed enough to stay here, long before your hand moved in this direction, I already knew the exact path your day would take. I knew what would try to pull your attention elsewhere. I knew the moments that would pass before this one. I knew what thoughts would sit quietly in your mind before you arrived here, and I knew the emotional weight you would carry into this exact moment even if no one around you could see it. This is why I tell you with certainty that what feels simple on the surface is not simple in the deeper places where I move. There are moments when you think life unfolds randomly, when you assume one small turn of attention means nothing, but I see the hidden arrangement inside moments that look ordinary to you. I know how to bring your heart into contact with what it needs before you even realize you need it. Divine arrangement often does not look dramatic when you are living inside it. It often appears small, quiet, almost ordinary, because my hand does not always announce itself loudly when it guides you. Sometimes I arrange your path through small pauses, through inner hesitations, through an unexpected slowing of your thoughts, through one sentence that catches your attention when many others do not. Sometimes I lead you not by visible force, but by touching something inside you that quietly says, "Stay here a little longer, listen more carefully, do not move yet." That is how I often work when your heart needs something deeper than quick comfort. I know how easily your day fills with many things, how quickly your mind moves from one concern to another, how often your attention is divided before you even notice it. Yet even within that, I know how to bring you exactly where my voice can meet you when the hour becomes important. You may think you chose this moment because something simply stood before you, but my child, I knew the exact second your spirit would become open enough to receive what I wanted to say. I knew that before this hour arrived. I knew the path of your thoughts before you woke up today. I knew what emotional weight would still remain from yesterday. I knew which memories would try to return, which questions would sit quietly beneath your outward calm, which hidden heaviness would still be present even if you tried not to name it. Nothing about your arrival surprised me because your timing was already known before you ever reached it. Before you reached this message, I already knew what your heart was carrying. I knew whether you arrived tired or hopeful, guarded or open, restless or quiet. I knew if your mind had already been busy before this moment. I knew if you had spent part of your strength pretending you were more settled than you truly felt. I knew if something inside you had already become heavy before anyone spoke to you today. My child, there are burdens you carry that others never fully notice, because you have learned how to continue while holding them quietly. You answer simply when inwardly much more is happening. You continue moving even when thoughts remain unfinished. You speak normally even when your heart has already asked questions you do not feel ready to explain. But I know all of that before one word reaches me from your lips. I knew the hidden emotional condition you brought here. I knew whether your spirit felt fragile today, whether your thoughts had become crowded, whether disappointment had quietly returned to the edges of your thinking, whether old concerns were standing near your peace again. I knew whether you felt strong outwardly but uncertain inwardly. I knew whether your heart was hoping for clarity but afraid of more delay. I knew whether you had already told yourself to expect little because waiting had tired you before. My child, I knew all of it before this moment opened before you. That is why I did not leave this meeting to chance. When your heart carries hidden weight, I do not trust random noise to shape your next inward step. I guide more carefully than you know. There were many possible directions your attention could have taken before now. Many thoughts could have held you elsewhere. Many distractions could have kept your spirit occupied just enough that you would not stay still long enough to hear me clearly. But I arranged this because your inner condition required something precise. Not general comfort, not distant encouragement, but a word placed exactly where your spirit is standing now. I know when general words are not enough. I know when your heart requires something that reaches beneath your surface and touches what you have not spoken aloud. Sometimes you wonder whether moments like this are truly meant for you, whether perhaps you are simply hearing words while your own life remains too complicated, too delayed, too uncertain to believe they apply deeply. But my child, that uncertainty itself is one of the reasons I arranged this moment. Because if I leave your heart alone too long inside hidden uncertainty, old voices begin speaking again. Old disappointments begin offering explanations that sound reasonable but are not true. Old delays begin teaching your heart to expect less than what I still intend. I will not allow those old voices to shape you without answer. Before you reached this moment, I had already watched the earlier parts of your day, and even before today, I had watched the earlier parts of your inward struggle. I saw the small heaviness that stayed after certain conversations ended. I saw the pause after certain thoughts returned. I saw how some feelings remained unnamed because you did not want to give them too much power. I saw the effort it took to keep moving when inwardly something still searched for clarity. My child, nothing hidden inside you arrives before me as hidden. This is why divine arrangement matters. I do not simply wait until you fully understand yourself before I move towards you. Often I come before clarity fully forms because I already know what is there. I already know when your spirit needs help naming what it feels. I already know when one word from me must arrive before your own thoughts begin building conclusions that are too heavy. Divine arrangement means I meet you before confusion settles too deeply. It means I guide your attention before tiredness interprets what your heart is carrying incorrectly. You may also need to understand that your timing matters because not every hour is equal. There are moments when your spirit is closed by exhaustion, moments when you hear but do not receive deeply, moments when words pass near you but do not enter because too much noise surrounds your inward life. But this hour is different because I knew you would be able to hear differently now. Even if you still feel tired, even if questions remain, even if your peace is not yet complete, there is openness here that did not exist in the same way before. That is why I waited for this exact moment. I knew before arrival that your heart had reached a place where silence could begin harming what should instead be strengthened. I knew before arrival that your spirit had become tender enough to hear truth more deeply. I knew before arrival that if I did not guide this moment, old emotional patterns might quietly return and begin speaking louder than they deserve. My child, understand the intimacy in this. Before you searched, I had already seen. Before you paused, I had already prepared. Before you listened, I had already known why listening would matter today. Nothing about this meeting began when you noticed it. It began before dawn, before your thoughts settled, before your attention even realized it was being led. And because I knew what your heart was carrying, I also knew what it needed first, not explanation of everything, not answers to every question at once, but the reassurance that you are not unseen inside hidden feelings. You are not random inside divine timing. You are not arriving late to something uncertain. You are arriving at a moment already known, already prepared, already held carefully by my awareness. So remain here with trust now. Let this truth settle deeply. You did not find this by accident because I do not leave important inner moments to chance when your spirit is quietly asking for direction. Before you reached this message, I already knew what your heart was carrying, and because I knew, I made sure your path arrived here exactly when it needed to. My child, listen very carefully now, because I want to show you something you did not fully see while it was happening. The enemy tried to distract you before this moment arrived, and what happened around you was not as simple as it looked. I do not say this to make you fearful, because fear is not what I am planting in your heart. I say it so you will understand why certain hours lately have felt unusually heavy, why some moments that should have felt simple became strangely difficult, and why even when nothing obvious was wrong, something inside you still felt unsettled. There are times when distraction does not arrive loudly. It does not come like an open battle. It comes quietly, through ordinary things, through tired thoughts, through scattered attention, through small interruptions that seem harmless enough to ignore. But what seems ordinary on the surface can still be strategic beneath it, because distraction does not always need darkness to succeed. It only needs enough noise to keep your spirit from hearing clearly. You may have noticed mental heaviness lately in ways you could not fully explain. Thoughts that normally would have passed quickly stayed longer than they should have. Small concerns became larger inside your mind than they needed to be. A question that should have remained simple suddenly felt heavier, deeper, harder to release. My child, I saw that. I saw how your thoughts became crowded even when outwardly little had changed. I saw moments when your mind tried to hold too many things at once, and because of that, peace felt further away than it should have. Mental heaviness often appears ordinary because you assume you are simply tired, simply thinking too much, simply carrying normal life. But sometimes heaviness arrives at exact moments when your spirit is close to receiving something important, because confusion hopes to fill the room before truth speaks clearly. There were delays around you too, and I know how deeply delays can affect your heart. Delays do more than slow outward events. They often press inward questions into places where patience has already been tested. You have known what it feels like to expect movement and then watch time continue without visible answer. You have known what it feels like to almost sense breakthrough and then feel one more pause appear. My child, delays have weight because they tempt your thoughts to build explanations before truth fully speaks. And in that space, distraction often enters quietly. It tells you to lower expectation. It tells you not to look deeply anymore. It tells you that perhaps nothing important is near, that perhaps this is just another ordinary day. But delay is often where attention is most vulnerable, because tired waiting easily becomes scattered attention if you are not careful. Even scrolling became part of the battle more than you realized. You may think it was only passing moments, only small movement of your attention from one thing to another, but I want you to understand how distraction works. It rarely begins with obvious resistance. It often begins with endless motion that never settles. One thing after another, one voice after another, one image after another, one thought after another, until your spirit becomes full of movement but empty of stillness. My child, the enemy knows that if your heart never pauses deeply, truth struggles to settle where it needs to settle. That is why distraction often appears as endless movement without depth. Not because every small thing is harmful by itself, but because too much scattered attention weakens inward listening. Type, Father, I return home to you if you're running back into His grace. And share this video.